I am an activist, but I didn't start that way. Hi, my name is Andrew Adams. I use he, him pronouns, I'm 20 years old, and I am a transgender activist. Growing up, I was a little bit different from your average young girl. When my mom gave me a Barbie doll, I was more interested in holding it by the feet and dusting the living room with its hair than playing with it. When my teacher in kindergarten made me wear a dress to the Christmas recital, I was mortified. Growing up, I was friends with other boys my age, and I didn't really see a difference between us. When I got to middle school, I tried to fit in a little bit more with girls my age, and I became incredibly depressed. I realized that I was transgender when I was 14 years old, and it saved my life. Now, my family isn't big on cable. We got Netflix instead before it was cool, but for whatever reason, on this particular day, my mom had cable on when I came over to her house. And what show did she have on, you ask? None other than The Ellen Show. Now, I'm not even a big believer in fate, but on this particular day, at this particular moment, when we tuned into Ellen, she had a man on named Aiden Dowling to talk about how he realized that he was transgender. In Aiden's words, I saw myself. It was like looking in a mirror, but also like time traveling. In my head, I went to all of those moments in my past where I felt like I didn't belong. And all of a sudden, something clicked, and it felt right. A week goes by, and I dive into the world of Google. Binders, pronouns, hormones, surgery, all sorts of resources, testimonials, and videos crossed my screen and implanted themselves in my head. I remember thinking, this feels right. This feels like me. A couple of days went by, and I sat crouched behind my computer on Facebook, which wasn't an uncommon place to find me, but I couldn't breathe as I sat there, typing out a message to my mom. Can I have a binder? Don't ask why. And I attached a link to a website that sold chest compression tank tops for people who wanted a masculine-looking chest. Now, if you know anything about moms, this whole don't ask why thing didn't work. She called me to the living room. Are you trans? The statement hung in the air for a moment. I was a little bit surprised, but I think I knew what I needed to say. Yeah, I think I am. She said, okay. That is exactly what I needed her to say. She supported me. A couple months later, I started high school as a boy. I had new clothing, a new haircut, new pronouns, and more confidence than I had ever had before. Things were going good. Nobody cared who I was before or who I was then. I was just Drew. A couple weeks later, something happened that would change my life forever. I was sitting in history class, and the speaker beeped. Can Drew Adams please come to the principal's office? In an instant, I felt 30 pairs of eyes, all turned onto me. Whispers broke out amongst my peers, who all knew that being called to the office always meant being in trouble. The long walk to the office gave me plenty of time to think about what atrocities I possibly could have committed in the short time since school had started, a mere 6 weeks, that could have warranted me being sent to the office. The walk felt long, made longer by the 90-degree September day of the outdoor breezeways of my school. Needless to say, by the time I got to the office, I was sweating. I went into the guidance office and sat down. Hi, Drew, the guidance counselor said. You're here because you are using the men's bathrooms. I was stunned, almost into silence. I didn't understand. Did I do something wrong? I asked. No. This is just how it is. Because you are transgender, you have to use the gender-neutral bathroom. It's in the nurse's office. At the time, there was only one. I was confused. I was hurt. And I was angry. I knew in an instant that my school didn't see me how I saw me, didn't see me as the person I am. They saw me as a problem to solve, as a glitch in the system. They just saw me as different, not even worthy to share the same space with my cisgender male counterparts. I went home that day upset, and my mom saw that I was upset, and we took every effort to change the policy. We emailed my principal and met with school officials who said it was a district problem. And then we met with the district officials and they wouldn't help us. We were discouraged, but we didn't give up. We filed an Office of Civil Rights complaint under the Department of Education under Obama, and they opened an investigation. But after the 2016 election, we never heard from our investigator again. Our emails started to bounce. We couldn't get a hold of anyone at the OCR. We were out of options. The last correspondence from our investigator told us to just wait, see what happens. So we waited, and we waited, and we waited and waited and waited until we were sick of waiting. And that's when we decided to contact lawyers. Right after my sophomore year of high school, we sued my school district. The legal system was an emotional roller coaster. The excitement I first felt about filing the case soon turned to anxiety when I realized what came next. Depositions, legal calls, question and answer drills with lawyers every day after school, combing through all sorts of documents, everything I had ever tweeted or posted or texted, and explaining memes to my lawyers all had me beyond exhausted. Turns out my case was the first one to have a full federal trial in court. I was the first transgender person to be deposed and to take the stand in front of a judge in a case like this. And knowing the precedent that I could set, I was terrified. But by the time the trial came around in December of 2017, I was ready. Now, the legal system is very hurry up and wait. After the trial, the work was kind of over for my family and I, not for the lawyers, but for us. And I almost went back to being a regular high school student. Almost. I still woke up every morning hoping that today would be the day that we heard from the judge. On July 28th of 2018, it was that day, and we won. We won on both Title IX and Equal Protection Clause, two laws that were designed to protect all Americans. Basically, the judge agreed that these laws apply to me too, and all trans people. The case is currently being decided at the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals because the school district appealed the case. And they're still deciding what to do next. So the case isn't over, but my work on it is. And so during this really long and complicated legal process, there were a lot of times where I felt like I wasn't doing anything, or I felt like I wasn't doing enough. And that's when I got into activism. I found activism at the very beginning of this whole process. When I was a freshman in high school, I was lucky enough that my school had a gay-straight alliance club, and my town, Jacksonville, had an LGBT center called Jasmine. My GSA and Jasmine gave me the tools and friends that I needed to discover and fall in love with activism, and to become who I am today. But what is activism exactly? The Cambridge Dictionary defines activism as a direct public action to influence social or political change that you and others want. Perfect. Super vague. I love this definition because it encompasses all sorts of things. Now, most people hear activism and they think about protests, marches, megaphones and big signs and shouting for all to hear. But that's not the only type of activism. As I mentioned earlier, my start of activism was in a club at school and in the LGBT center of my town. Community activism is a great way to get involved and to find people who care about the same things that you care about. Together, you can do more as a group than any of you could on your own, and I think that's beautiful. Speaking of beauty, art is another often forgotten form of activism. Art can change hearts and minds. Art can tell the stories that don't make it into the history books. Art can reignite someone's passion when they've had a bad day. Art can change the world. The next form of activism that I want to touch on is social media activism. That's often called slacktivism or fake activism, but I completely disagree. Social media activism is great for if you only have a couple of minutes. between classes, for example, or if you have kids to take care of and can't make the big protest, or if you have a job, sometimes protests are inaccessible. Sometimes all you have is a couple minutes and you want to do something to influence the community you care about. Share something to your story. Post a tweet to a trending political hashtag. Make a TikTok. All of these things don't require any time and very little energy. And they are all forms of activism too. Communicating the ideas of a movement is crucial for building momentum to create change, and social media is a powerful tool to do that. The last form of activism that I want to touch on is self-care. Taking care of yourself in a world that wants to see people like us fail, people who want to create change, is activism. Thriving in spite of oppression, thriving in a world that doesn't want to see us succeed, that's activism. Take care of yourself so that you can take care of what you care about tomorrow. My favorite thing about activism, and ultimately why I want to be an activist for my entire life, is how anyone can do it. Seemingly small and insignificant moments and events can build upon each other to create the change that we want to see, so that we can live in the world that we want to live in, that we deserve to live in. Activism can get us there until that world is in reach. So if you've ever felt a heaviness in your chest or a pit in your stomach, looking at all of the horrors of the world but unable to do anything about it, if you're anything like me, hear this. You can make a difference. I can make a difference. We can make a difference together. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.